My name is Nora. What should have been the culmination of my youthful dreams unexpectedly turned into a painful abandonment. My parents took me to Croatia, promising a trip to reconnect. The truth is that I was going through a turbulent period. Low grades in math, arguments with classmates at school, and frequent absences from classes. My mother tried to downplay the situation, saying that I was just unstable, while my father, always reserved, barely commented. The surprise came with 2 plane tickets, an invitation to a trip for 3, without siblings, without interruptions from work. At that moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was their way of trying to start over. The first few days were a mix of strangeness and hope. We ate gelato by the sea, visited ruins that had little interest to me, and took smiling photos for Facebook. My mother even held my hand while we waited for the ferry to Dubrovnik. I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe we're really starting over. The next morning, everything changed dramatically. We were scheduled to fly back to the United States. We had breakfast together at the hotel buffet. My mother wore that coral lipstick she reserved for special occasions. My father, as usual, drank his black coffee, absorbed in the newspaper without even turning a page. Just before checkout, my mother turned to me and said, "Let's go down the street and buy some souvenirs. We'll be back in 15 minutes. I nodded, barely looking up from my phone, trying to answer my best friend who wanted to know how the forced family reunion was going. An hour passed, then 2, then 4. I asked the hotel staff if they had seen them. The receptionist frowned and said, "Oh, the couple in room 109 already checked out this morning. The key card no longer worked." I ran to the room. It was empty. My suitcase was gone, along with my passport and even my backpack. It was as if I had never been there. I called their phones, going straight to voicemail. Text messages were not being delivered. Panic began to consume me. I paced the sidewalk, crying and calling incessantly. A stranger stopped to ask if I was okay. I wasn't. The next morning, frantic and sleepless, I went to the American embassy. A woman in a black blazer listened intently, then typed something on her computer. After a long silence, she turned to me and said, "Your flight back has been canceled. You are no longer on their health insurance or as an emergency contact." I'm so sorry. It hit me all at once, cold and sickening. They hadn't just forgotten about me. They had removed me. They hadn't left me behind. They had deleted me. That night, I went back to the hotel lobby, hoping that maybe there would be a note or a message, anything. The only thing waiting for me was in the pocket of my jean jacket, a small folded note in my mother's handwriting. "You are 18 now, old enough to survive." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a sentence that cut through me like a knife. I huddled behind a row of bushes outside a bakery and cried until I couldn't breathe anymore. I didn't know how to get home. I didn't even know if I still had a home. In the distance, I could hear music from a nearby cafe, maybe a wedding, people laughing, glasses clinking, a family that still wanted to be around. I remember clutching my phone, looking at the last picture we took together. My parents smiling under a marble column, me between them. We looked like a family, but the cracks had always been there. I just hadn't seen them. Later, much later, I would remember flashes of the week before the trip, my father sitting on the porch, holding an official-looking white envelope stamped "Final Notice" in red, my mother pacing the kitchen, whispering too loudly to be casual, and a night when they thought I was asleep, but I heard them arguing. "We can't take her with us," my mother had snapped. "She'll ruin everything. She's not a child anymore. She's barely hanging on, just like us." I wanted to believe they were just letting off steam, that it was stress, a phase. But now, sitting alone in a country where no one knew my name, I realized the truth. They had planned this. They hadn't forgotten me. They had erased me. I didn't sleep the first few nights. Not really. I camped behind a bakery near the edge of town. There was a metal dumpster that radiated enough heat to keep the wind from cutting through me. I huddled with my jacket zipped up to my chin and my arms wrapped around my stomach, listening to the sounds of morning deliveries, glass bottles clinking, crates banging, men shouting in a language I barely understood. I counted my breaths just to keep from crying. On the third morning, I was caught trying to steal a loaf of bread that was cooling on a tray by the back door. My fingers were numb, my mouth dry, and I didn't even hear the footsteps behind me until someone grabbed my wrist. I froze, eyes wide, expecting police, trouble, deportation. Instead, a woman stared at me. She had thick gray hair pulled back in a loose bun, flour dust on her apron, and eyes so piercing they seemed to pierce right through me. She didn't yell, she didn't scold, she just said, "If you're hungry, work." Her name was Miriam. She was 68, ran the bakery alone, and had lived in the same apartment above for more than 30 years. She let me wash dishes in the back, scrub the floors, carry sacks of flour I could barely lift. That night, she handed me a folded blanket and pointed to a cot in the storage room. No explanation, no questions. It wasn't a bed, it wasn't warm, but it was safe. And at that moment, safety was everything. Miriam didn't ask about my family. I think she just knew. The days turned into weeks, and I learned enough Croatian to understand basic instructions. Wash, scrub, more flour. I mimicked her movements when she kneaded dough, watched her eyes as she adjusted the oven temperature without ever looking at the dial. Sometimes she spoke to me in quiet sentences, usually late at night, as she wiped the counter. One night, as we were shaping loaves of bread, she looked at my hands and said, "My daughter had hands like yours, always smelling of yeast, always too curious for her own good." I didn't ask what had happened to her daughter. She never mentioned it again. But from that night on, she began saving the misshapen loaves of bread, the ones too ugly to sell. She would leave them wrapped in brown paper next to my bunk, as if it were a ritual, as if she knew that love for someone like me had to come in small, silent pieces. I found a broken laptop that someone had thrown behind a dumpster. I spent hours fixing it with parts borrowed from a local repair shop. I taught myself how to connect to public Wi-Fi and enrolled in an online program to earn my GED. I studied near the back door, next to a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. I did my algebra homework while the scent of cinnamon and toasted sesame seeds wafted through the air. Every time I got my test results, I whispered the score like a prayer. I kept the jacket I was wearing the day my parents left me, not because I wanted to, but because the note was still in my pocket, the one that said, "You are 18, old enough to survive." Some nights I would unfold it just to prove that I was surviving, that I was still there, that their words hadn't broken me. But deep down, I wasn't sure who I was without them. I was no longer a daughter, not a student, not even a citizen, just a girl washing dishes in a country that didn't know her name. And yet, somehow, I was still alive. The first time I made money that didn't smell of yeast or sweat came from a stock I barely understood. It was a small Greek shipping company. I had read an article about its restructuring plan in a crumpled business newspaper someone had left on a coffee table. I took a chance, invested the €200 I had been saving for new shoes. Within 2 weeks, it had tripled. It was at that moment that something changed, not in the world, but in me. I wasn't just surviving, I was learning how to move. Miriam caught me one night with my laptop open and spreadsheets scattered around the small back room. "Are you playing accountant now?" she scoffed. I shrugged. Just curious. The truth is, I was doing more than that. I was obsessed. I devoured every free resource I could find online, YouTube lectures, translated business forums, and a scanned PDF of Wilson Buffett's essays I'd found through a suspicious download link. I read them 3 times in 1 week, scribbling notes in the margins of old receipts. His voice became my background music as I scrubbed pots and pans or kneaded bread. I took bigger risks. Some failed, some blew up. By 20, I had clients. By 22, I had investors. I registered a small consulting firm with a translated name, nothing flashy, just enough to sound legitimate. Word spread. I helped local suppliers optimize supply chains, advised travelers on digital investments, and even created a short course for other undocumented youth looking to build online income streams. Miriam never asked how much I was making, but she noticed the changes. The new phone I bought her for Christmas, the espresso machine I quietly installed in the bakery, the way I paid her gas bill without saying a word. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "You act different now." Less like she was waiting for something to drop on her head. I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. I started sending money to youth shelters across the United States, anonymous donations, always, especially to programs in California. I told myself it was just giving back, but deep down, I think part of me wanted them to notice, to wonder who was helping those girls the way they didn't help us. I never posted about my work, never gave my full name. I didn't want attention. I wanted freedom, peace, a life where I didn't have to explain myself to people who had thrown it away. But even with all the progress, even with the customers and the money and the strange feeling of being respected, I still carried the girl from the bakery in my bones. She was quiet now, but she wasn't gone. She showed up in moments of doubt, in sleepless nights before big decisions, in the way I still flinched when someone raised their voice too quickly. I wasn't healing, I was building. And the thing about building from the ashes is that you remember every brick you laid, every scar you covered, every crack you had to fill with your own hands. So when the past called, when a certain address appeared on a foreclosure list, I didn't hesitate. I booked a one-way ticket home. It was Miriam who saw it first. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her morning coffee, glasses perched low on her nose, flipping through an old stack of international newspapers someone had left at the bakery. She didn't even look up when she said it, just silently slid the paper across the table and tapped a small black box in the bottom corner with her finger. "Do you recognize this address?" I stared. The street, the city, the zip code. I knew every number. I had memorized that mailbox growing up, the creaking screen door, the crack in the driveway where we were never allowed to step foot. My parents' house in California, the one they had bought after they left me, the one they had sworn up and down on social media was their new beginning. Now it was in foreclosure. I leaned back in my chair and let out a sigh I hadn't even known I was holding. There's a moment when the universe gives you exactly what it once tore from you. It doesn't feel like victory, not at first. It feels like silence, like still water before a storm. I didn't tell Miriam what I was thinking. I didn't need to. She knew. We flew to California under the guise of business. I went under my legal business name, a corporate identity I'd built over the years, clean, neutral, untraceable. The auction was held in a sunny parking lot outside a county building. The crowd was a California cliché. Older men in pastel-colored polo shirts, investors with tablets, and retired couples in sun hats fanning themselves with brochures. No one gave me a second glance. Miriam stood next to me, holding the bidding card. I whispered the numbers in her ear, and she held up the card calmly and easily. No emotion, just business. The price went up faster than expected. Someone else wanted the house too, a man in khakis and boat shoes who stared at us as if we were in the way. Miriam didn't flinch when the final bid was placed, and the gavel hit the wood. The auctioneer's voice echoed. Sold to bidder 173. Miriam slowly lowered the card. We didn't celebrate, didn't even look at each other. We just stood there as the auctioneer continued, and I let reality sink in. I owned their house, the living room, the refrigerator, the master bedroom with the window that looked out onto the street. Every inch of the life they'd tried to build without me was now in my name. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. What I felt was something colder, sharper, control. A week later, they got the notice. Certified mail. Legalese. 30 days. They must have stared at it in disbelief, not knowing who had bought the house, not knowing that the girl they'd abandoned at 18 had just signed the deed to their future. And I wasn't done. They asked for a meeting. Their lawyer called Miriam, thinking she was the new owner, and said that my parents were willing to negotiate and wanted to speak directly with the person who had bought the house. I agreed. The meeting was scheduled at a small real estate office on the outskirts of town, neutral, private territory. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in navy blue, hair tied back, sunglasses on. Not hiding, just unreadable. They arrived 2 minutes late. My mother entered first, wearing a beige cardigan and big sunglasses, the kind that are meant to make you look fragile. My father followed, clutching a worn leather briefcase to his chest as if it might protect him. They didn't recognize me, not at first. They sat at the table, nodded stiffly, and waited. I didn't say a word. I just slowly reached up and took off my sunglasses. My mother's face drained of color. Her lips parted slightly, as if a word had caught in her throat. My father blinked twice, then looked down. The silence stretched thin and sharp between us. You left me, I said, in a foreign country with no money, no identity, no goodbye. My mother's hand twitched. We thought you'd hate us less if we just disappeared, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For a second, I saw something real in her eyes. Not regret, fear maybe, even shame. But then she hardened, as she always did. You were impossible to live with, always dramatic, always fighting. We were drowning. You were dragging us down. I nodded once, slowly. You were supposed to be the lifeboats, I said, not the ones throwing people overboard. My father still hadn't looked up. Say something, I told him. Look at me and tell me it wasn't your choice. He opened his mouth, closed it. His hands clenched on the folder. Your mother thought. I don't care what she thought, he shuddered. You didn't even try to stop her, I said. You let her erase me. His voice, when it finally came, was dry and brittle. I didn't think you'd survive. I stood up, calm, collected. Well, I survived. And now I own the house you live in. My mother blinked once. You're bluffing. I slid the signed deed across the table. Her hands hovered over it, shaking. Miriam walked in from the hallway at that moment, clipboard in hand, face unreadable. She nodded at them, businesslike and cool. We'll need the keys in 30 days, she said. You'll get the official move-in schedule tomorrow. My mother looked between us as if waking from a nightmare. You can't do this. We're your parents. I glared at her. No, you were my parents. And you made your decision. She started to cry, not real tears, not at first. It was the act she always put on when things got complicated, the fragile, wounded mother role. But I didn't move. Miriam placed a small envelope in front of her. These are the legal instructions, she said. We suggest you read them carefully. My father hadn't spoken again. His eyes were glassy now, lost, but I didn't feel sorry for him, not anymore. I turned to leave. Wait, my mother said. Why now? After all these years. I paused in the doorway. Because I needed to see your faces when you realized I didn't need you to come back. I just needed you to know I was back. And then I left. They posted about me online. They called me a liar, that I was brainwashed, that I had appeared out of nowhere, heartless and vindictive, and stolen their house. I didn't respond. Miriam asked if I had seen the posts. I let them talk. I told her, I'm too busy building something real. We converted the house in 4 months. The yellow siding got a fresh coat of paint. The cracked tile in the kitchen was replaced with smooth oak laminate. We took down the old live, laugh, love signs and replaced them with bookshelves, framed photographs, and soft blankets folded on each chair. We turned their master bedroom into a shared dorm. 2 bunk beds, new mattresses, lavender pillows, a safe for each girl to store her own things. Miriam called it the new door, because for some people, the first one never opened. She started teaching again, baking classes every Wednesday. Her students were girls like me, too young to be alone, too old to be anyone's responsibility. She taught them to knead dough, to trust their own hands, to fail without giving up. We hosted our first open house in the spring. 6 girls showed up that week. 2 were silent. 1 wouldn't make eye contact. Another cried when we gave her clean socks. Miriam just smiled and said, let them breathe, the rest will come later. That night, I stood in what used to be my parents' backyard. The air smelled of warm sugar and lemon soap. The porch light was soft and golden. Inside, someone was playing music on a cracked cell phone speaker. Laughter echoed through the window. Real, loud, unapologetic laughter. Miriam stood beside me, holding a mug of tea. Do you still feel like you don't have a home? She asked. I looked around. I saw light in every window. Shoes on the doorstep. A girl brushing her hair in the hallway mirror. Another curled up on the couch, finally asleep. And I knew. This isn't just a home, I said. It's where we all start over. In the midst of all the hardship, Nora had someone who took compassion on her and helped her turn things around. What would you have done in her place? Tell us in the comments. If you liked this story, like and share this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.